It's Thursday. That means it's time for another edition of the Horse Racing Happy Hour. Hanging out with Matt Dinerman. My name's Louie Remote. At Radio Louie on the Twitters, and you can find him at Free Colts Handicap. If you are so interested in that, he calls the races at Monmouth Park. And, of course, earlier in the year was calling them at Oaklawn as well. We wanted to get him his thoughts on Triple Crown stuff, about Oaklawn, about Monmouth in general. Just kind of a nice spot in the season to have Matt on the show. Our most frequent guest of anyone that isn't a handicapper is Matt Dinerman, and frankly, you do a bunch of handicapping. So, Matt, good morning, man, or afternoon now. How are you?
Good afternoon, Louie. Yeah, and good to be on with you once again, especially on a rainy day like this. It's raining in New Jersey, yeah. So I'm wearing something warm. Watched a bunch of Netflix last night while it was raining.
Hey. Nice. What is your go-to Netflix at this point? Because I imagine you've moved on from Race for the Crown. Like, what are you watching these days?
Oh, I've been binge watching a few different things because I worked so hard at Oaklawn, and now I'm here, and right now we're 2 days a week, so I'm really taking this time to just take a break, not do too much. I actually watched the Brett Favre thing last night.
Okay, yeah.
I had known the whole backstory and everything, but to re-jog my memory, Netflix always seems to find the scandalous stories, don't they?
They nail it for sure. I guess I haven't seen it yet, but of course I work at a sports talk radio station, and I should definitely go watch it. But I think that's my watching tomorrow night. I'm just Thursday and Friday ends up being a busy taping time for me. But that story is so bonkers as far as where the funding comes from, how he treats other people, all of the things. I'm sure it's a must watch for sure. Out of a 5-star rating, what is Matt Dinerman giving that one?
I gave it a 4-star. There were a couple things I would have liked to have seen more of. A couple questions I had coming out of it, but overall, I thought it was a good documentary. And all these documentaries seem to have messages. And even though they're sort of hot button, scandalous stories like this one, for example, I think you can learn a lot from it, and that especially includes. When you have power, somebody else has power, you're in a position where you're making a lot of money or you have authority. It's important to know, that some people do take advantage of that. Other people, you learn, hey, that's not how to treat people. So that's what I took out of it.
Matt Dinerman with us. He's calling races currently at Monmouth Park, called them at Oaklawn over the winter and spring, of course. Wanted to get your thoughts up first here on the Triple Crown so far. I thought so far we've had two very different races. I thought the Derby, in a rare occasion, Matt, went to form. We said, hey, these 4 or 5 horses are going to go to the front, and they did. These, 5, 6 horses are going to trail and be in stalking position. They were. It included Journalism, who ran second. We're going to have a bunch of these horses in the back of the field trying to make a late run, and we did, and Sovereignty did that, won the race. We saw Sandman make up late ground as well. We had a surprise finish from Owen Almighty, a very, very good fit as well. But Matt, what I think I learned in the Preakness was that, Journalism is probably the best 3-year-old going. I think it's a fair and reasonable thing to say. But boy, we've got a bunch of fun, whatever the second tier is behind Journalism, number of 3-year-olds this year. Like, I think your Haskell this year is going to be spectacular, for example.
I hope it is. We've got the Jim Dandy and the Haskell sort of around the same time. So along with a couple of other, West Virginia Derby and Mountaineer and a couple other races like that, just off the top of my head. So you're going to start seeing, everybody's sort of, for the most part, at least going to the Derby, they're all on the same boat. They're traveling on the stream. And then eventually you're going to see these different paths, and horses are going to go this way, they're going to go that way. And then the best ones are going to meet up in the Travers again. So we're excited. This certainly at this point in time seems like we have a strong crop of 3-year-old colts and geldings. So it'll be interesting too. I know Sovereignty is also a Godolphin horse, but does Good Cheer, what does she do? Does she try the boys at some point?
Sure.
I don't know, but it's been a very intriguing 3-year-old season for these horses. Definitely Good Cheer's clearly the best one in the filly division. The male division, you've got all different types of horses. So especially a bunch of late bloomers, I think, this year. Make for just a really good summer season for us in that division.
It's interesting with the 3-year-old crop and, all the discussion around the timing of the Triple Crown and the distances and those things. We'll get to that in a second because you had a tweet that you spent a fair amount of time on, frankly, that about 4 days ago that I want to get into. the late blooming thing, Matt, I think that's going to become more and more common in our sport. And some of these summer derbies are going to be the beneficiaries of it. I think the Haskell's a good example. You mentioned all those other regional ones. I'm lucky I get to spend every July, the Saturday after July 4th up in Indiana, for their derby, that kind of stuff. I think those fields are really benefit from whatever this version of training is that trainers are doing now, where they're bringing not necessarily along more slowly, but are willing to bring them along more slowly. They don't have to be champions at 2, in the modern era for them to, to get any kind of, good reviews that way. I think there's a chance that, races like the Haskell, the Jim Dandy, et cetera, become stronger races as we move forward. And something you said earlier, I think is a really important point as well, which is, you're right. Everyone's on the same stream going into the Derby. And then the streams kind of break apart. And frankly, it's probably like more of like a river or an aqueduct going straight to the Kentucky Derby. And then it does branch off into different ways. By the way, that's not bad. It's okay that only one of those branches is a Triple Crown. It's also okay if a horse like Oscar runs in the Lexington, shows up in the Preakness, and then we see him again, in that Haskell or a Jim Dandy or an Indiana Derby, whatever it might be, right? And so I think that's part of it that we lose, is we so focus on that one branch off of the river going toward the Triple Crown. We forget there's all these other ways to go.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a horse like Dragoon Guard, right, last year, who, perfect example, a horse that was a late bloomer, probably wasn't good enough to win a race like the Travers or the Haskell, but he found a bunch of these other avenues to go. Brad Cox has slowly gotten him to progress and get better little by little, and now you're looking at a horse that took some time off. He's coming into his 4-year-old year and could do some damage there. So there's different ways to go. And I think in an era where we're really, a lot of us, at least racing fans, would like to see these horses run longer, longevity important to the fans, and in my opinion, the business. And another, speaking of avenues, way you can talk about the way we breed horses, whether we need to breed a stronger horse, we can talk about all those things, but we would like to see longevity. And I think one way we can do that is by managing the horses properly. And some of these horses there's certain trainers who want to see them win early, and the owners want to see them win early. That's the way they go. But I don't think longevity that necessarily helps some of these horses. So some horses are precocious, and you strike when the iron's hot, and it works for them. But look, it took until Street Sense for a Breeders' Cup juvenile winner to finally win the Kentucky Derby. So that tells you it took a long time. And these horses that are a little more patiently conditioned, you see even a horse like Sovereignty, who Bill Mott, I mean, he's known not to squeeze the lemon dry right away. And even when he ran in the race before the Florida Derby, even the Florida Derby, he didn't really have this horse fully cranked. And then he really tightened the screws on him for the Derby, and he got the win there. So I think we'd like to see, that's another thing. We'd like to see horses that win by 12 that are
right. The flight lines, yes, right, yeah.
Right, but there's nothing wrong with giving horses a race or even not cranking them up and seeing them gradually get better, because at the end of the day, sometimes those are the ones who win the long game.
I appreciate you mentioning Sovereignty in this part of the conversation, because I think using Godolphin as the example of needing to change the Triple Crown is not the right motivation here. What they do is there for their operation, and I'm not downing it at all. I've talked a lot. Frankly, I've been fortunate to talk with Michael Banahan quite a few times this spring, and I think a lot of what they do in North America, it's an incredible operation, farm on up, and they have a different goal than American Thoroughbred owners do. And so not going to Baltimore, frankly, I thought it was always on the table. It was always something that might not happen with them. But last year, you got a guy in Kenny McPeak who's, from Central Kentucky. This is what he does. He runs on all three of them with Mystic Dan. And so I think, part of that goes back to this tweet that I referenced from you at 3 Colts Handicap on Twitter for everything that Matt does there. And he wrote, let's analyze the last 15 years of horses. The only one I think I don't agree with was, didn't Swiss Skydiver run? She didn't run 15 days before in 2020, right? Because
that was a mistake on mine. You don't even have to disagree with it. It's just a fact, error on my part. So I apologize. A couple people noted that. Yeah, that was an error on my part.
It's okay, because what I'm pointing out is it was that one doesn't matter because it was COVID. Nothing was normal about that year.
Yeah, it's almost crossed the line out.
Yeah, exactly right. And so, we get Authentic out of that race. He comes back at Keeneland the next month and goes ahead and wins the Breeders' Cup Classic. But you mentioned Journalism and Sandman, first and third in the Preakness. Sees the Gray, comes out of the Pat Day Mile on Derby Day, wins. Mage, runs third. It wasn't his best effort, but he still gets a big boy check in 2023, 2022. Epicenter, second in the Derby, second in the Preakness. Midnight Bourbon, sixth in the Derby. And Medina Spirit crossed the wire first, exit the Derby, and they run second and third in the Preakness, et cetera, et cetera. You give these examples back to Exaggerator, back to American Pharoah, of course, California Chrome, Oxbow, I'll have another, Shackelford, et cetera, back to looking at Lucky. Why is this hard, Matt? What is it about that people can't just do?
When you say that, what do you mean by that?
Your evidence that this isn't what people make it to be, essentially. We're supposed to have 20 in the Derby, and then 14 of those horses are supposed to go straight to Baltimore.
Well, I think because you've got, for lack of a better term, people that have been following the game for a good ways. You don't see a lot of beginners that are tweeting things like this or noticing things like this. They're trying to learn. And they're living back in the days of 15, 20, 25 years ago, farther back when horses ran back quicker. You saw horses like Captain Badgett and Silver Charm and Real Quiet in that era even, where a lot of horses were more willing to wheel back. And for whatever reason, that's not the case now. I think part of that is because there are other options. It's about resume building. It's about resume building to make stallions. And that's a whole nother discussion, is breeding to race or racing to breed. And I think that when you look at this resume, you see horses can wheel back quickly. Other people made a good point, and this was only a little part of the whole story, is this tweet that I put out, which is just from Kentucky Derby to Preakness, how do these horses fare? The ones that are good horses typically wheel back in 2 weeks, and they're able to do that. My theory has always been it's harder to win the third leg than it is the second leg. You can do it once. You can even wheel horses back twice, but if you keep wheeling them back quick, eventually, for most horses anyway, it's going to catch up to them. And I've always thought that. I don't think the Preakness is an issue wheeling back in 2 weeks. I think if you go to the third leg, that's where you may see a horse that's a little more tired. I think a 2 week turnaround, in fact, for trainers that are good trainers, most trainers, but especially good trainers, it's easy to do that. Very easy. You don't have to do anything in the mornings. You just have to jog, maybe gallop. You keep them happy, they're fit, and then you wheel them back in 2 weeks. And there are some people that have pointed out on that tweet, including Mike Rapoli was one of them, who said, well, what about this whole long span of, yeah, they can do it. They can wheel back quick, but how does that affect their whole year? And while that is a good point, I believe it's very difficult to pinpoint and prove that. If you're doing a study, let's just say half these horses get hurt, you cannot prove that the reason they got hurt and they didn't have a good rest of their career or 3-year-old season is because they ran in those races. There's no way to prove that. So there's some of these things you can't prove necessarily, but the numbers speak for themselves, and the numbers indicate that horses are coming back and they're doing this move just fine.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Matt Dinerman with us. The Preakness itself, the move by journalism. Have you ever called anything like that?
Not that I can think of. I mean, I'm sure it's happened in a claiming race that I can't remember where a horse gets bumped. I mean, that one horse, Morning Addiction, that stopped running, that was probably the craziest thing I've ever seen, where she stopped running on the far turn and came back to win. But I haven't seen, especially in a race like that since a Fleet Alex, where a horse lost that much momentum and was able to come back and win. I texted Michael McCarthy and said it almost reminded me of Zenyatta, the way he closed. You know, there was a horse in front, and here comes Zenyatta, here comes journalism. He's not a closer, but he closed like a turf horse, really, and it was sensational to watch, even though your heart went up to your throat for
oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, for sure.
I loved it. I'm so glad I got to be there, Matt. No, I loved every second of it. And I won't lie, I had a big bet across the board on Gosgar, so it actually ruined part of my day that way, but it was still – it's a good part about this sport, Matt. Even if your bet doesn't hit, you might see something that you've never seen before. You might see an effort that you've never seen before. And we got exactly that on Saturday. And I wanted to ask too, because I know what it is in my mind. Would you rather journalism be heading to Saratoga for the Triple Crown, or for this rematch that we could potentially get with Sovereignty?
I would. It's hard for me to say because I think that I'd like to see whatever's best for the horse to run longer.
Okay. Okay.
I would say if I was actually just on the phone with somebody
Okay.
and I was taught, it was a pretty lengthy conversation about Michael McCarthy, and I've gotten to know Michael. I think Michael is a fantastic manager of horses. He's a good horseman. He's hands-on, but he's a fantastic manager of horses. You think about all the good horses he's trained and just most horses in general that have ability. And I can't think of a single one where I've said Michael McCarthy mismanaged that horse. He has managed every horse very well. So if he's running this horse in the Belmont, that tells me he thinks this horse is just that good to do it. He's feeling good. He's got that sort of physical build and the mental ability to be able to do this. And he's confident that running in this race is not going to affect the horse long-term in a negative way. I would like to see him in the Belmont personally. I think it would be great. I would rather see him, if it was just me as a fan, I would love to see him run in the Belmont, and I would love to see him and Sovereignty go at it again because this is what racing needs. Racing needs rivalries. They need rivalries. Silver Charm, and Free House, Victory Gallop and Real Quiet.
Absolutely.
This is how you captivate people. This is how you get people to pay attention. So a long answer to your short question, yes, I would rather see him in the Belmont. I would love it. But if Michael McCarthy says we're not doing that for whatever reason, then I am going to 100% trust that what Michael is doing is best for the horse along with the ownership group. So I would love to see him in the Belmont. I don't think it's going to be a problem for him either.
That's right. It's a good take by you all around, but I also just seeing the horse the day after the Preakness, there's nothing about his demeanor that makes me think that he's not ready to go. So hopefully even, with the 3 weeks, whatever, he'll be really, really ready to go. Maybe get a work in a couple of weeks, whatever it might be. But I think I got the sense they were going to Saratoga, Matt, when they were the last ones to leave out of that Preakness group, outside of Fart of Honor, but that was more of an international shipping kind of thing. But when I saw Brendan Walsh at the airport on Sunday, and Gosger was headed back to Churchill, that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, I know what he's doing. But when Michael McCarthy was hanging around and trying, are we going to Saratoga? Are we going west? What are we doing? And he ended up going up to New York. It was kind of the giveaway.
I selfishly am also very happy.
Well, you want those two at the Haskell, yeah, right?
Well, I'd love to see them say, you know what, we'll just wait for the Haskell, or run in the Belmont and then go to the Haskell. Just figure out a way to get him to New Jersey. That's my biased take.
Man, my brain is, I'm crapping out right now. Farrow ran and won the Haskell, right?
Who was that? Say that again.
Farrow in 2015.
American Farrow did. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought. He lost the Travers, but won the Haskell, right? Wasn't that remembering my summer?
That's another thing that I sort of scratch my head over is like, I'm surprised there aren't more horses that,
point to the Haskell.
And I may say this in a biased way because I'm a Monmouth guy, so I can't deny that. But if you've got a really good horse, like, why do you feel you need to prep in a grade 2? Like, just run in 2 grade 1s in a row. Like, it surprises me there aren't more people.
I actually agree with you. Yeah, especially with the money, right? I mean, because the third, fourth place finish pays a lot of bills, man. It does. Seriously. Yeah.
For sure. And the Haskell, if you want to talk about breeding, I mean, you win the Haskell, and that's a big race for your colt. Say you won the Haskell is a big deal.
621 races at Oaklawn this year. How many did you call?
621. I did not take a break. And there were a couple days where I was not 100%.
You were not. I remember.
You do remember. Okay.
Yeah. I do. Oh, no, we were talking. I hated it for you. Look, purse is over 900K a day. Oaklawn is just its own thing. The expanded schedule and what you're looking at for next year as well, Matt. What stood out for you this year at Oaklawn? How did you, because the returns haven't been stellar since, the Arkansas Derby, as far as the 3-year-olds, as far as the top end winning, as far as the Derby and the Preakness and that kind of stuff. But Sandman showed himself just fine in the Preakness, frankly. How good was the Arkansas Road, do you think, Cold Battle, all those horses?
I think it was right below the top echelon this year. And here's the thing. You look at Florida Derby, Santa Anita Derby, and now Arkansas Derby. I would say those are the 3 most prominent races generally.
Yep.
And it changes every year. I mean, you see Santa Anita Derby, one year it's strong, one year it's not. Florida Derby, strong race typically, but not every single year. And the same is with the Arkansas Derby. You didn't get slouches in there. You got a horse like Sandman, who's probably, as you mentioned earlier in the show, one of those second echelon type of horses, second tier. He's not going to beat journalism probably 10 out of 10 times. He's probably not going to be sovereignty 10 out of 10 times, but there's nothing wrong with that. And hey, he's a solid horse. Cole Battle, probably a grade 2, grade 3 type of horse. I still wonder how far he wants to go. I think he might be sort of like a mile and a 16 type at his best. That's my own personal opinion. But and then the filly division, 5G, she scratched out of the Kentucky Oaks, but she came back and win the Florida Oaks or the Gulfstream Oaks. You see Quiet Side. She got a 14 post position, not a great post in the Kentucky Oaks, and she didn't embarrass herself by any means there. So I think that both races were solid. They weren't necessarily the top echelon of the division. There's no fillies in the Fantasy or the Honeybee like Good Cheer was, but there's nothing wrong with that either. And we've seen some of the older horses that have run at Oaklawn go on to do pretty well in other places, like Banishing, who probably should have won the Churchill Downs the other day in Kentucky. So, I think second tier for both the 3-year-olds, but this year. But that could change next year. As we saw the year before, we had a Kentucky Oaks and Kentucky Derby winner coming out of it.
A 14th training title for Steve Asmussen down there in Hot Springs. When does that get broken?
Once he doesn't train 400 horses, would be my answer to that. He's got so many horses. I think he's got about 400 horses. And it's amazing to me because you could sit there with him near the paddock if he's throwing horse not race day and say, hey, how's this a $10,000 claimer you got that you saw run at Louisiana Downs the other day? And he'll tell you everything of where the horse is at, where is he running next. It's incredible. So I think just on a sheer numbers perspective, Steve was 9% this year at Oaklawn. He actually had a low percentage meet, but he was still the winning trainer because he just started that many horses. And I'm pretty sure, like, if he really wanted to, he has enough horses throughout the country and all his different strings that if he really wanted to, he could probably enter a horse in every race in every condition book if he really wanted to. I mean, he's got that many horses. So that's his deal.
His superpower. Yeah,
right. It's so many different options. And that's another thing. When you see him, for example, send a maiden special weight horse on Rebel Day from somewhere, he has horses to choose from, and that he's going to send the one that he thinks is the best shot to run well on a big day.
John Ed Anthony from Shortleaf Stables became the winningest owner in Oaklawn Stakes history this year. That's an interesting but cool distinction, frankly. Any favorite runners out of their stable?
Well, I think Quiet Side was just really cool to watch, and I thought they did a really good job with her. Quite frankly, I think they really managed her well and got her to progress little by little. And then the Oaks came around and she ran on a sloppy track at the 14 post. So I think that was their big runner this year for sure. And what I respect about Shortleaf, they've been around a long time, obviously, but they have different levels of horses. I mean, they have lower level maiden claimers, they have claiming horses, and then they have really good horses. And I just respect the fact that they keep all of their homebreds, which are all of them. You'll see them, well, most of them. You see sometimes they'll buy a horse at a sale, but you see a lot of homebreds from them as well. And even if they're not the best horse out there, they keep them and they try to get them to win and put them in the right spot. And they're very big on thoroughbred aftercare, very much do their own thing to make sure that all their horses are well taken care of after they race. So just a really classy operation all the way around from them. And it was good to see them get a win in the owner, or do well in the owner standings in terms of money.
I always ask you about jockeys because I think you and I are similarly interested in jockeys and their styles and different things. By the way, shout out former star at Golden Gate Fields, Armando Ayuso, off to a banger start at Santa Anita this recent meet. I think you and I have known for a long time what a talent that guy is. For example, watching him ride in Northern California, getting better mounts now in Southern California, but it's Francisco Arrieta who wins a second riding title there, gets to 1,000 wins as well, Matt. So we're talking about a guy, look, 1,000 wins is a lot, so I don't want to downplay that at all, but is just getting to 1,000 wins, but has multiple titles in Arkansas, at Oaklawn, excuse me. What about him works at Arkansas? Why does Francisco ride so well?
I think that he knows the track very well. He knows the colony very well. We've seen the same types of riders show up the last few years. He knows the other riders' strengths and weaknesses, and he can play into that. But this year, he was, third, fourth early on, and he made a big run. I mean, he was just winning, 3 wins the day, 4 wins the next day, 3 wins. I mean, he was just winning in chunks. Christian Torres had a big lead on him, and he ate into that lead. Now, Christian missed 7 days of live racing at Oaklawn. He had a family issue he had to get to. He got a couple days, so some things didn't work out in his schedule. He rode on Kentucky Derby Day at Churchill Downs another day. So Francisco beat him by 3. If Christian had ridden all 7 days, he would have been around. But he just got so confident, Francisco Arrieta. He just was riding winner after winner, and it was like the whole race was slowing down for him. I mean, every move that a rider made that was a mistake, it seemed that he countered that in a way like he was playing chess, like he knew exactly what to do. And it was perfectly on display what happens when jockeys get A, live mounts, and B, get really confident. All of that encompassed what happens in that scenario, which we see, by the way, with certain riders like Irad Ortiz, Flavian Pratt, these big names that win race after race, day after day. That's them all year round. That's them year after year after year. And you saw that with Francisco riding as good as anybody for that reason, because he just got really confident, getting live horses. He's not making mistakes. He's out riding people. He's being smarter than most of the other riders. And that's no knock on other riders, but he was just in another zone to me watching races. And it was very impressive to see that. Obviously, I have a lot of respect for our riding colony at Oaklawn, but everywhere I've been, I mean, even you mentioned Golden Gate.
Oh my gosh.
It's the most underrated riding colony I've ever seen. And it's a shame because ever since this whole one circuit thing happened, a lot of them have not been able to produce what their stats were at Golden Gate and been able to get back on that rhythm, when I know in my heart and my brain that these guys have the physical ability to ride well. It's just about getting a chance. Yeah, I think that confidence comes a long way in that profession. You got to ride the right horse. If you're riding a bunch of 20-1 shots, if you're riding 10% trainers all the time, you're winning at 10%. But no miracle work is going to be done on horseback. However, if you ride the right horses and you have the right confidence and you start getting that confidence, it's going to shine. And I think the horses can feel that as well.
Yeah, watching Billy Answer Georgia get the mounts that he does in Southern California hurts my heart a little. I'm not gonna lie, because he just what he was getting up north, and then like if he had a decent amount at all, he was a must include immediately at Golden Gate and other places for sure.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen a rider who's 6-8% somewhere. They go somewhere else. They ride for top trainers. They get live horses. They start winning at 18-20%. And wow, they got a lot better. Well, yeah, they probably got better to a point, but no, it had nothing to do with that they couldn't do this. It's just they weren't getting the right opportunity. If you're a minor A type of player and you can be a really good minor A, double A type of player, or I should say, I'm thinking of little league, single A, double A type of player. Let's go into the baseball league here. If you're a solid minor league player and they throw you in the majors and you don't do well, and then you go back to the minors and you start producing, maybe the major leagues, maybe that wasn't the right scenario for you. It's baseball. Maybe you're not as good as the top echelon. However, this is a different game, right? It's horse racing. Horses, trainers, all of these things can make a difference in a win and a loss. The jockeys have to have the horse to do that.
You called your 10,000th race this year at Oaklawn as well. And I know you don't personally tend to keep track of these things. You told me once you have a buddy who does, which is awesome. You have good friends, man. It's nice to know.
I do have good friends. He's a good friend.
That's a really good friend, frankly. But you hear a number like 10,000, man. And I think in horse racing, more than any sport I've ever been around, we take the numbers for granted. Like in the last year, Matt, I went to Derby 150, Wood 100, and Preakness 150. And it, you just take for granted that these things have been going on this way. 10,000 race calls, though, for a guy that this is what you've always wanted to do, man. Right? I mean, you are, I remember very, very, very clearly talking with you when you were at Golden Gate, and it was clear that things were not going in the right direction. And you still said something like, hey, 30 years from now, if I'm calling races here, this is going to be a spectacular career for me. Obviously, now you're calling grade ones and different things, but 10,000, that number, did it mean something?
It absolutely did. I mean, you think about like all the hard work that went into it. People that I talk to regularly now who I can very, very much remember when I sat there and told them I want to be a race caller. And they said, really, you do? Or listen to my first call on tape that I presented to them. And they go, wow, that's pretty good. Keep working at it. Just all the hard work and all the people that helped give me an opportunity. And I mean, I think it's the same as when a baseball player gets their 2000th hit, or if a jockey wins their 1000th race. It's special. And when my friend texted me and said, we got a milestone coming up, you're about 50 wins away here, I was actually very surprised. I'm like, no, there's no way I could call that many races. So that was cool to get a text like that. And you know, we were talking about it at Oaklawn, and I mentioned it to somebody, and it got through to the marketing team, and they ended up putting something up for it, which was really nice of them. So just it makes you think and reflect about the journey to get to where you're at. And there were some ups and downs like anything else, and we're really excited about that. And hopefully, you know, the next 10,000 can be just as smooth, if not a little smoother, because we've had our ups and downs, but that's how it's always going to be. But it's been a joy. And also, like, when I think about some of the races I call, you know, listening back to years ago to now, you don't even realize the improvement until you listen to it.
Right. No, that's a great point. Who did you get a note from that you were like, oh, that's really nice of them?
From this particular,
from the 10,000, from 10,000. Yeah. Did you get a nice note from anybody?
Just fans. I mean, just fans. I mean, that's important to me, because I see this job as hospitality.
Okay.
I'm not here trying to be, you know, somebody who needs to be liked or admired or worshipped or any of that. But when you get people, fans, customers that are telling you we appreciate your work, that means a lot to me, because that's why I have a job. The reason I have a job is because of the customer. If the bettors, the fans, if they're not around, there's no game. And it's amazing to me that there are still people that don't seem to figure out that concept. There are certain, and just being totally blunt, there are certain people that you read online, you're like, what are you talking about? Like, bettors and customers are what make the game, whether you want to admit it or not. Yeah. And my job is hospitality. It is to help, hopefully, enhance the experience, not do it, not, well, I'm going to be the one to enhance the experience, but it's simply helping to enhance that experience. If somebody likes a race caller, it's going to help them. And that's part of the reason I got into this job, because when I was watching races, the race caller enhanced my experience, and I wanted to help enhance the experience for other people. So for them to come to me and appreciate my work means that I'm doing the job that I need to be doing, which is helping enhance people's experience. And I'm not going to enhance everybody's experience. Not everybody's going to like my work. And that can be said for any race caller, whether you're at a lower level track or a higher level track. But to hear that, get some thoughts that, hey, you know what, we really appreciate you. You have helped enhance my experience. Naturally, it's going to make me feel really good.
Matt Dinerman with us. He'll be calling the races at Monmouth this weekend, including the Cliffhanger. It'll be race 9 on Saturday there.
I like in the that name, don't you? The Cliffhanger.
I've heard worse. I got to say, it's one of my favorite things about Preakness weekend is how good the stakes names are. I think the dinner party is an unbelievable stakes. It's like perfect. The stories about the horse Preakness himself, about what a jerk he was, I think that's great. And then, you know, like the very one, and, you know, those sorts of shit, just over and over. Maryland just doesn't miss on their stakes names. It's really great. But the Cliffhanger is a pretty solid one as well. If you haven't watched many races at Monmouth Park, number one, shame on you. But number two, here's a great opportunity to get going. They do have a turf shoot in the middle of the turf course. They're one of the better turf courses in all of the United States there. 100,000 on the line here. This is for 3 and up here. Some horses, almost certainly that if you follow horse racing and turf racing around the country, you would have heard their name. Signator will break from the 1 here. Highest distinction draws the 2. You'll see Forever Super, who's been running on the East Coast up and down as well. And Fulmineo comes in as the 9 horse here as well. Matt, do you have a favorite in this one yet?
Well, I like Signator in this race. As a morning line favorite, Forever Super is the morning line favorite at 7. Yep. My top pick at the moment, anyway, I think is going to be Signator. Third start off a layoff. It seems that Chip McGahee, I mean, we all know he's very good at developing horses, and it seems that he's found this horse's niche, which is turf route. They tried to make him a dirt horse. They bought him for a lot of money, 1.7 million, and things didn't really pan out for him on the dirt. Then he's gotten to the dirt. He's won a couple races off this layoff. He improved second start off the layoff. And I think that there's more room for him to run good again. And that's sort of how Chip McGahee trains, just getting him to improve little by little, especially off the layoffs. I really think with this angle third start, he's going to run his best race. And he's a bit of a closer, doesn't have a ton of speed. I'm looking on paper here. There's not abundance of pace, so that's a concern for me. But I think it's going to be a race where maybe they can sort of pack up a little bit. Maybe this horse who has shown a kick can outkick some horses here. I really liked his last race. I thought it was a very solid effort. So he's going to be the pick in here, but this is going to be a good gauge to see where he fits, because I think definitely this is a stronger field than when he's seen his first two races, including that stake at Laurel Park last time, the Henry Clark.
Yeah, I do like the Arnold Delacour trained Fulmineo on the outside, especially for the price here, Matt. If I can get that full 8-1 coming, and this is second off the layoff here after an extended amount of time off from September of last year, I think just being able to break from that spot, going the mile last time, I think if the race were any longer, the horse probably gets there. I like the mile and a 16th for that purpose, and I think Victor Carrasco will give this one a good ride as well. So interested in Fulmineo at that price, especially if we get anywhere near that. I'm not sure that we will at this point, but a couple coming off the layoff here. But this, boy, I got to say, this looks like, if you're looking at the PPs for Monmouth Park, this is it. You see the horses from Laurel, from Parks, from Aqueduct. This is it, buddy.
For sure. And there's positives and negatives, right? I mean, the positives is that for the horsemen, there's a lot of different places you can go. The negative for certain tracks is there's a lot of places you could go. So you see a bunch of horses. Some are local, some are shipping in from New York, Maryland, Philadelphia. We've seen horses come from Florida, because a lot of Florida trainers, they have strings in Florida in the winter, and then they come up in the summertime. So all things considered, you get this couple horses, and it reminds me a little bit of Oaklawn in that respect. Mm-hmm. Trying to figure out, okay, this horse ran at this level over here. This horse also ran at the same level. Which one's better? Which race is tougher? Obviously, at Oaklawn, when you see, Kentucky maiden special weights, those are going to be tougher than Remington Park maiden special weights. But when you look at the difference between Laurel Park and Delaware, or Gulfstream and New York, it can get a little bit more tricky in this scenario. And you've got horses coming off of layoffs, as you mentioned. You've got horses, New Jersey bred, There Are No Words, who did some really good work here. He's Pure Gold, the same thing, who probably on their best day could compete against Open at this level. They're not out of the hunt here. So a really good race, really good race.
Yeah, I was thinking it was very Monmouth Park, because the breeding was Kentucky, New Jersey, France, Florida, and Maryland. Like, it's just it's a
all over the place. Yeah. I love
perfect, fantastic Monmouth race. That's exactly right. So that will be race 9 on Saturday. 4:51 is the post time out there, and he'll be on the call. His name is Matt Dinerman. Who wins the Belmont, Matt?
I would say if journalism is in, I'd give him the nod, because I think Michael will know he's ready to run good again. And I will say I'm not subscribing to the fact that journalism got a bad trip to lose the Derby. I don't think this trouble was as bad as some people are making it out to be. He was just second best on the day, as far as I'm
correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's okay, by the way. That's okay. The horses lose races. Okay,
I think they're very evenly matched. I don't think either of them, if they run their race, is ever going to be that far off from the other one. I think it's, at this point in time anyway, who knows? Maybe journalism, sometimes horses, they run a race like the Preakness and they wake up even more, which is scary to think about, or they regress. And I will say, I think journalism's either going to run a really big race in the Belmont if he runs, or he's going to regress in the Belmont and people aren't going to be surprised because he ran so hard in his last couple of starts. But I would be 100% willing to bet if he's entered in the race, Michael McCarthy and Aaron Wellman talk it over, and Michael's saying this horse is showing us signals that he's ready to run again and he'll be just fine. And he probably will, because Michael is a very good judge in that respect, as we mentioned, really good at managing horses. So I would pick journalism. I would pick him, but I think those two would clearly be the horses to beat. And I think people would try to beat them, and I don't necessarily think that would happen personally.
What would be the bigger uproar in our ridiculous social media around horse racing? Sovereignty winning the Belmont and everyone going, "Oh, come on, what are we doing here?" Or a third horse that we haven't mentioned here winning the Belmont.
I would say Sovereignty winning.
Yeah, I think that's
because
right.
I think people would be going, well, this horse could have won he would have won the Triple Crown, because in a lot of people's opinions, and including mine, if journalism got that trip in the Preakness,
Right.
Sovereignty probably
is outside just prancing by. Yep, I agree.
Yeah, so he would have won the Triple Crown, and people are going, what the heck is this? I think now I'm not sure that they would be in quite as much of an uproar as when we all listened to Steve Asmussen's podcast interview, but it would be close.
It's too bad we don't know how he feels, Matt. You know,
yeah,
it's too bad we
actually, I respect him. Just on the record, like, he's saying what's on his mind. I have no problem with it. He didn't.
We need much more of that.
He's just being honest about it. That's fine.
We need much more of that. Yeah, we need much more of it. If that's how he feels, he needs to tell us. I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, he's Matt Dinerman. He'll be at Monmouth Park this weekend. You can catch all the races there. You guys are Saturday and Sunday currently. When do you guys go to 3 days a week?
So, well, here's the good news. We do have 3 days a week this week: Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Memorial Day. Right. But I believe, I'm going to make sure I got the calendar here right. I'm going to pull this up. I believe we would go to, let's see, 3 days a week starting June 20th. Because
it's later than I thought. Okay,
the 14th of June is going to be Haskell Preview Day.
That's right.
Big day for us. And then the 15th is going to be Father's Day, which is the second largest on-track crowd every year behind the Haskell. So we are figuring right after that week to go to 3 days. And I'm really looking forward to that. I like at least 3 days a week personally.
I get it. Yeah,
it's a blessing in disguise for me. Oaklawn's like a 5-month Saratoga. You're going hard. You're going out to dinner, handicapping a lot, doing a lot of work. I'm not a partier necessarily, but I like to go out to eat and enjoy myself, and doing a lot of work there. So to come here and maybe not quite as much workload is nice for someone like myself. Because mentally it's a fun as heck meet, but it's also a lot of work, and there's some pressure involved as well. So it's good to come here, get a few 2 weeks, but mid-June we'll be back 3 days a week. And then, in a month after that, Haskell will be around, and we'll get to have you watch the UN again live, hopefully.
Oh, God.
Are you not?
It was a spectacular one this year. No. My plan is to be there for sure.
Beautiful.
Haskell Preview Day, though, we'll bother you then, okay?
Beautiful. That sounds like a wonderful plan. I would love it. And the couch is still there. The comfy couch is still there.
It's God's work. That's what that is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure FDR, when he made his way to Monmouth, sat in that couch at some point.
No rubber duckies in there at that point. But no. If people have not been either to Monmouth or to Haskell Day itself, I don't know if I got lucky and that was like a spectacular version of Haskell Day last year, Matt, but it was packed. Really stood out. And I was really happy to see it. The crowd was young. A lot of people were younger than me. That was a cool thing to see, man.
It was. I mean, that was a spectacular day of Haskell. I know that they were saying that was the biggest crowd other than American Pharoah on Haskell Day, or since American Pharoah. A lot of young people. And that really almost, and I hate to say this, but it was a surprise that there were.
It was. I agree.
People. I was like, holy smokes. And I had to put cotton balls in my ears like a horse because it was so loud, because my windows open, as you saw when I call the races. Sean Collins did a great thing with us upstairs. If you want to look at it, viewers.
Pharaoh 12 is that account both on YouTube
account. I mean, he does a phenomenal job. I watch all those videos because I want to feel what it's like on track. Awesome. But yeah, it was that loud. It was just incredibly party fested all the way around.
Yeah, it was a spectacular day. The only place I know that has a bar in the paddock, it's Monmouth Park. They're having fun. They got a beautiful library. They got Tom. I mean, you got people. I mean, it's a whole thing, man.
If you are an owner or a trainer or someone in the paddock, free bar in the paddock, go enjoy yourself. Why not? It's Haskell. Party, have fun. Make sure you're doing everything along the lines of being legal, but make sure that you have a good time if you'd like, and behave yourselves, but have a good time.
Looking back, Dornick and Mindframe in the stretch. That was a heck of a stretch and a run, frankly, but also Mindframe coming back the way he did. Certainly in the Churchill Downs, we'll see him again in the Met Mile in a few weeks. So he's Matt Dinerman at 3 Colts Handicap. We'll be up there at Monmouth, calling the races Saturday, Sunday, and Monday this week. So make sure you get in with him that way. I'm Louis Rabot. We're going to call it quits from here. So we will see you next week. 10:20, I should say, Eastern Time. Find me ESPN 680 here in Louisville. We'll preview the State Bred Stakes in California before our full card analysis on SoCal Saturdays here on the platform as well. He's Matt Dinerman. I'm Louis Rabot. Thanks so much for making us part of your Thursday. Happy Memorial Day.